Good afternoon. We have gathered here today to honor the memory of Bob and Peggy. Although they are no longer with us, they live on in our thoughts and in our hearts. Each of us, whether a member of their family or friend, has been touched by the experience with Bob and Peggy, and each of us has come here today to cherish those moments. A loved one is the treasure of the heart, and losing a loved one is like losing a piece of yourself. But the love that these people brought you did not leave, for the essence of the soul lingers. It cannot escape your heart, for it has been there forever. Cling to the memories and let them find a way to heal you. The love, the laughter, the joy, and the togetherness you shared will make you strong. You come to realize that your time together, no matter how long or short, was meant to be, and you were blessed to have such a precious gift of love in your life. Keep your heart beating with the loving memories and trust in your faith to guide you through. Know that through life moves on, the beauty of love stays behind to embrace you. Your loved one has left you that to hold on to your heart forever, in your heart forever. I would like to share a poem from Aunt Trudy. She is Bob's sister, and she became a true sister to Peggy as well. It's called The Family Tree. Two limbs have fallen from the family tree. I keep hearing a voice that says, "Grieve not for me." Remember the best times, the laughter, the song, the good lives we lived while we were strong. Continue our heritage, we're counting on you. Keep smiling and surely the sun will shine through. Our minds are at ease and our souls are at rest, remembering all how truly we were blessed. Continue traditions no matter how small. Go on with your life, don't worry about the falls. We miss you already, so keep up your chin until the day comes where we're together again. Thank you to Aunt Trudy. At this point in time, I was supposed to invite Aunt Marilyn up to say a few words to set the scene of Peggy and Bob's love story. Unfortunately, weather got the best of them and they are not available to come today. So I will just read an email that I got along from Deb. So this is Aunt Marilyn speaking. I don't quite know where to begin, because how do you sum up a lifetime of memories with your big brother? Bob was just 11 months older than me, so from the beginning, it was always the two of us. He wasn't just my brother, he was my first friend, playmate, partner in crime, and protector. Going back to June 1996 in Kitchener, Peggy and I became roommates. Peggy was invited to a wedding of a coworker in 1968 and was to bring a guest. I arranged for her to meet Bob the weekend before. They hit it off right away. Bob was her plus one at the wedding, which is where their love story began. We had so many good times and would get a group of friends together and go to the Crystal's Palace, which is long gone, in Listowel on a Saturday night, where there was a live band, dancing, and perhaps a little drinking. At one point, Peggy and I shared an apartment with cousins, Mary and Pat, Craig, and there was never a dull moment. The challenge each morning was getting Peggy out of bed and moving. With persistence on our part, she would make it to work on time, at least 99% of the time. Peggy wasn't just my brother's wife. She became like a sister to me. We had as many long talks over the years. I will truly miss those conversations. Through the years and the many challenges life has thrown at us, that special bond was always there. Losing them both so close together is unbelievable hard, especially for Kevin, Debbie, and Angela. But we can take comfort in knowing they are together again with Stephen. We can be forever thankful for them, for their memories, the laughter, and their love. Thank you, Aunt Marilyn. I would now like to call Kevin forward. He's promised to give us a long speech today.
I have notes here, I just have to find them. My book here. What the heck? Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Obviously, a bit more important due to the weather. I know it was probably difficult for a lot of people, especially from a distance, to make it here, but we appreciate it for sure. It means a lot to Nikki and I, and Debbie and Angie and the boys. The support we have received from family, friends, neighbors, and the community has been amazing. It really is one of the benefits of living in a small town. Thank you doesn't seem like enough words to express how grateful we are for all your support. There's a few specific people I would like to thank as well. Dr. Murray and the nurses at the Kincardine Hospital did an excellent job caring for my mom mostly and my dad as well. Amy and Mary Ellen for their help and guidance through this process. It's difficult, but they make it so much easier. Ruth McLean, she gave us some lovely words at my dad's funeral. And then Crystal Murray for her inspiration at my mom's funeral, and also for facilitating today. We really appreciate it. My Aunt Diane and her family helped provide some lunch back at the apartment after my dad's funeral. The United Church Women, Women's Group, for their lunch after my mom's funeral. They did a really good job over at the United Church in the basement there. Jody Rothmeyer for the lunch provided today, also a nice spread. I hope everybody gets a chance to have a little something to eat. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Gummy worms for anybody that wants one. And then thanks to the township and the bar staff. Obviously, the most important part of this is the bar today, and the talking to, I guess. I'm for sure missing some people on the list, but we're very grateful for all of the love and support that's been sent our way. The messages, the texts, the food, like ridiculous amount of food, like dropped off at all three of our houses. Anyways, we just really appreciate just being in a small community and just the support that you get from that. So on to this next part here. What a change for our family in only a few short weeks. From having two parents and spending a wonderful Christmas day together to standing here in front of you today. I'm finding it hard to believe there'll be no more holidays or birthday celebrations at my parents' house. These are special times when we would all get together, have a meal, play games, go over the gossip around town, all of the regular family things. I'm sure we're going to create new traditions for birthdays and holidays, but I definitely won't forget the old ones. My mom was a very kind and selfless person, always putting others before herself. She was also very loud and forceful when someone wasn't listening or following her instructions. She had a way of gritting her teeth together with pursed lips and saying, "Kevin John Taylor, get up here right now." Whether it was fighting with a sibling, a broken window, or damaging a car, the yelling was fierce but short-lived, and she was back to unconditional love fairly quickly. Our house was one of the ones we always had lots of friends over. We used to hang out in the basement and have little parties or stay up past curfew, things like that. During those sleepovers, we would sneak out the basement window and return sometime later through that same basement window. We always thought we were getting away with something, but as usual, moms always know. She knew exactly what time we left and would stay awake to make sure that we all got back safely. I remember talking to my mom about Nikki. She loved Nikki. Need my beer. Okay. She loved Nikki, and my mom thought she was strong and would keep me on my toes. My mom was right again. And Nikki has been the perfect fit for our family. I will miss bringing the boys down to the apartment on Sunday afternoons. Both my parents' faces would light up as soon as they came running in. They would run around and play and get filled full of treats, just how grandparents do. Most of the best memories of my dad revolve around sports. I remember road trips to Chepstow to watch the fastball games when he was umpiring. Some of my favorite times were being the water and stick boy for the juvenile teams that he coached. I was probably about 14 or 15 and went on all the bus trips to the All-Ontario games. As you can imagine, the players would slip me the odd beer on the bus trip home and think it was hilarious when I got off the bus hammered. More than once, I stumbled off that bus and puked in the parking lot at the arena. My dad coached me in hockey while I was growing up. He was a tough coach, but fair. He was always trying to balance winning and making sure everyone got played. There was a lot of long rides home after a bad game. It was tough having my dad be a coach growing up, but at least I got to be the #1 goalie every year. So that worked out. Again, thanks everybody for coming.
Did you leave your what? Your beer? Oh, your gummy works. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin didn't speak at either of the funerals or whatnot. He was quite shy, but he certainly did a wonderful job today. It is very hard to stand in front of your community, your friends, and speak from the heart. So thank you very much, Kevin. Next on the list, I believe, to come forward is Deb. And there's no trouble speaking here at all. And I believe she's going to say some words on behalf of her sister Ange as well.
Okay. And I'll start by saying I spoke at both funerals and had 5 or 6 pages at each one. So I've cut it down a lot, but it's still lengthy. But anyway, I have cut some out of this. Both my parents were very strong, and their journey over the last 6 months truly demonstrated that they were both fierce fighters. Really, Mom beat all odds when she fought back and made it out of the hospital in November. Honestly, it was a miracle that she won that battle and made it home. I think Mom knew her time was limited after getting home, but we never paid any attention. I think we all just ignored the signs and thought she could beat anything. And believe me, Mom fought so hard to stay here with us this time too. Even at our age, we're still her kids, and she didn't want to put us through losing both of them. If it was her heart and her will, she would have won the fight. But unfortunately, her body just couldn't keep going. Right up until her final hours, she was saying, I just want to get back to that apartment, even for a few days, to help you kids get all of your dad's affairs in order. And she was giving us all advice and direction regarding what we should focus on when she was gone. And she fought so hard because she was worried about Angie. She was worried about her feeling very alone and not having anyone. But Angie is strong, exactly like her mom. And she told Mom that it would be really hard, but that she would be all right. Dad was very stubborn and determined, and from the moment they told him he had 30 days to live, he was fighting to defy all odds. I was in awe every day of Dad's ability to look at the cup half full instead of half empty. He refused to let cancer beat him or get him down. And if you know him well, you know that if he decides he's going to beat something, he tries very, very hard. He would have been a great occupational therapist. I was really proud of him because he would modify how he did activities that were becoming too hard so he could continue to be independent, hiding at times how weak he was actually getting. Mom's functional decline occurred over years, decades really, versus Dad's that was over months and weeks. Mom regularly talked about how much harder it was for Dad to accept his losses, as he had so much to accept in such a short time. It broke my heart every loss he had, never being able to go back to the house on William Street, having to walk with a walker, not being able to go out in the car on his own as he couldn't get the walker out of the trunk by himself. All losses that Mom had accepted years ago. If there was a way, though, he would find it. Right up until his very last oil change in December, he did it himself. Well, not really, but he got it done. He called over to Montgomery's, said he would honk the horn when he got there, and asked if they would come out and get his walker out of the car for him. They didn't mind at all. To many in the community, he didn't seem sick at all. He continued to be out at every Wolves game and Will's hockey games. The only difference was that he was using a walker and getting a bit more help. His disease journey was not all bad. Dad became more talkative and engaging again. He initiated more conversations at home and was very inquisitive. We saw more of his sense of humor and playfulness again. He was forever rolling his eyes and making faces at Ange and I. You would think we were the stupidest people on earth. I believe that he would still be fighting and pushing himself forward if it wasn't for the damn stroke on Boxing Day. It was then that he truly lost control of his journey and his independence. It was a nightmare for him. So frustrating for him to not be able to talk, eat, walk, or do anything on his own. You would think that that would make him give up, but it didn't. He maintained his determination to try to get better and did exercises every day to try to walk again. And he did that right up until the Friday before he passed. It was then, on that Friday, that he decided to take back control. The scariest thing about losing my parents is that they have always been there for us and had our back. If we were having a bad day or had a problem at work or with a friend, or were not getting along as siblings, we would call Mom and she would listen, provide us with objective feedback and advice, including what we had done wrong and where we were at fault, helping us to identify the solution or plan for moving forward. She's always been our sounding board, our voice of reason, except when she was yelling, of course, our teacher and our savior. It'll actually be really quite hard for Kevin and Angela and I sometimes to get along. You'd think we're all berries and get along all the time. But honestly, she was the one who smoothed a lot of things. Because Kevin and I butt heads a lot, and Angie cries way too much for Kevin to cope with when dealing with a problem. And I sometimes have been known to bulldoze Angie. For me, Dad always believed in me. He was my safety net and the first call whenever I needed to get the boys somewhere, taking them to hockey or ball, work, golf, or friends' houses, and even to school if they missed the bus. He usually had a lecture for Evan, though, on the third time or fourth time that he missed the bus. He was also a primary male role model for my boys. He spent time with them, teaching them, helping us around the house, and having them help him at his, supervising and helping the boys, mostly Will, with grass cutting, ice, snow removal, and putting up the Christmas lights. He definitely kept us all on track. For my parents, I think the boys and I moving back here 10 years ago really helped to keep them both active and out and about in the community. They were part of each other's lives each and every day. For both my parents and the boys, it was truly a blessing. The depth and closeness of the relationship they had, the purpose, learning, and joy they shared and brought each other is unmeasurable. For Mom, spending time with her family was her greatest joy. Mom lived for and through us all. She wanted to be spending time with us doing all our activities, even the simple things like just driving into town and going to go grocery shopping. Our last trip into town was about a week before Mom went into hospital. I thought she had an infection, so one afternoon when it wasn't snowing, shocker, because it always is, I took the opportunity to take her into the lab. Once done there, I took her to the eye doctor. She had been asking for months to get her glasses tightened, and they came right out to the car to do it, and we went shopping at No Frills. It was a beautiful sunny day, and she put her seat back and had a sleep in the sun while I did my shopping. I heard her tell at least 4 or 5 people that week what a lovely afternoon we had had and how nice it was to be out and in the sun. If I have any regrets, that is it, not slowing down to take her out more. She loved to go for breakfast or out to eat. We could have done it more. I was away for Mother's Day this past year, so on the Friday after I just surprised her and picked her up and took her out for dinner for fish and chips at the Bruce. Just the two of us. We had a lovely time. I should have done it more. Both Mom and Dad took every opportunity to spend time with the boys and I. Whether it was taking the boys to school or to hockey, ball, or soccer, or school concerts, track and field, or cross country, they wanted to be there, and they couldn't. And if they couldn't, Mom was calling as soon as it was done to find out how it was. She loved going to hotels and traveling with us to conferences with me, Ange, and the boys, exploring the city we're in, Niagara Falls, Chicago, Vancouver, Banff, or traveling to the sunny south with us all, or to Nashville, San Francisco, or LA, or just going to hockey or soccer tournaments. Dad even loved coming to the sunny south. especially sitting at the upper pool bar or trying his luck at the on-site casino. Mom and Dad also liked the annual trip to the cottage at Upper Wash Beach. We always had lots of laughs, some fights, and a really good time. Because again, if you're ever at the Taylor house, you know we had a lot of good fights. If we were going somewhere in the car, Mom always wanted to go with us, and if it was to a game, Dad was right along with her. As a couple, my mom describes their love as a quiet love, that it was the little things that showed they loved and cared deeply for each other. For my dad, that was leaving Mom her favorite candy alongside her chair, or having a surprise birthday dinner party for her and making all the food from scratch on his own, even the soup. Or their 5 p.m. coffee dates at the kitchen table or on the front yard to discuss their day and the plan for the next. For my mom, it was being the homemaker, the one who cared for the kids and managed the home. She was not showy, and she was ever supportive of Dad and his community involvement. She was a traditional old school wife. You might not know that. She believed that she should be home when her husband got home from work so that she'd get him dinner. It had to be something pretty important to keep her away from home at supper time if Dad was there. I honestly don't understand it, but she truly believed if there was a male in the house at supper time, it was her responsibility to make them dinner. If Dad or one of my brothers was not there, there was no supper to be had. Angie and I just had to fend for ourselves. I had no trouble, and she saw it as an opportunity to eat chips or pie or some other sweet for supper. They truly did have a very strong love. Although they may have bickered constantly, they both wanted to protect the other and they hurt terribly when the other hurt. And don't you all know, strong love is built on bickering, or so my parents and grandparents thought. As a mom, my mom was a mom. Her constant focus was on how she could provide for and make the life better for her kids and grandkids. She truly led and supported her family using the same tactics that I used when leading a company. She was strategic and mindful and so bang on. I will be honest, I'm not half the mom that she was, and it terrifies me to imagine not having her help me to know what to do to best support and teach my kids. Mom and I had this very conversation a couple weeks ago. I think it was actually the day Dad passed when we were coming back from the hospital. She said that her strategy is to make every situation a learning opportunity for the boys. That if that is what she does, and that is what her best advice for me would be. And while we were talking, she had 2 examples from the week prior of situations that she had used to teach my boys. She was one smart lady. As a dad, I remember Dad getting right down on the floor to play with us or going to the lake and coming swimming with us. And he was the one you went to in the middle of the night if you were sick because there was no waking up Mom. I see the theme. Aunt Marilyn also talked about it. Dad was never really a disciplinarian. He rarely raised his voice. Mom did enough yelling for the both of them. But if he did raise it, you knew you had to listen because there was trouble. As a parent unit, he and Mom were an amazing team. They were truly the best. I am sure it wasn't always the case, but they always maintained a united front when dealing with parenting issues. And as Kevin said, my mom is always knew what we were doing and before we did it, and she still did this with my boys. The strength that my parents had to not just bubble wrap us and actually let us be regular teenagers and get our driver's license after Stephen died is unbelievable to me, especially since Will just is getting his. They didn't have cell phones or tracking. They just had to trust. I can't even imagine. I do know how hard it was for my mom, though, as one night when I was a teen, I got home at 2 a.m., the curfew time, but she was beside herself, pacing and yelling at me as soon as I got in. I said I was on time. What's wrong? And she said, "You're usually 10 minutes early." That's a real change, because I'm not ever early now. But to my mom, if you weren't home on time, you were dead in a ditch. And fair enough, she had lived that. Honestly, I could talk forever about my parents, and I know you wouldn't like that, and their awesomeness. But I do want to leave you with one thing. Family was very, very important to both of them, but wasn't the only thing. They both had a lot of interests and hobbies outside of our family. Dad's interests outside the family focused on volunteering his time to support the community and the people who lived in it. In Belgrave, he started and was a member of the local Kinsman Club, was active within the church, and was also a member of the community men's choir. And in Ripley, he ran for council and was elected to the town council. He was the convener for WA, the chair of the arena renovation committee for the rebuild or the expansion, was the lead for the reunion beard growing contest, and was on the Wolves executive and Ripley Minor Sports Board. My dad loved coaching hockey in Ripley, mostly the juveniles, and before that in Belgrave. And I've heard that he was viewed as a pretty top-notch or good coach. Now, I know nothing about coaching hockey, but I believe that he must have been quite talented, and that was fairly high credit, because I can't even remember ever seeing him on skates or playing hockey. But I did find a picture this past week of him on a school hockey team when we were going through some stuff. But what I do know is I can remember him always having the respect of his players, the coaching staff, and the community, and I can remember his team winning a fair bit. And he even led the juveniles to a silver stick win. Mom's free time outside the family did include being a member of the UCW and of the Horticultural Society, and she regularly volunteered at the school and arena, but her time was mostly spent on expanding her many talents. She would initiate DIY renos at home to save money, and she would regularly make crafts to make a little extra money. She would freshen up the house with paint, wallpaper, or borders, fix the cupboards, install carpet, refinish furniture, and even installed the tub around in the bathroom. She was also constantly making new things. She may have sat a lot while at home, but she was rarely idle. She would see a craft, sweater, or outfit that she liked, teach herself how to make it, make a couple, and then she would give them as gifts and progress to selling them. A small-scale entrepreneur, really. Whether it's making flower pot dolls, wooden Christmas trees, wreaths, swags, crochet doilies, scarves, quilts, or macrame chairs, I'm sure many of you have been a recipient of something she made. Mom's other focus was on connecting with and supporting her friends. At home and at work, my mom selflessly helped and supported others. Most recently, her favorite hobby was talking on the phone. I think many of you would have heard her say that the phone was her best friend. This was because she couldn't get out as much. For Ange, Kevin, and I, it would be very hard to not have her to call when we are coming home from work, and for me, I don't know what I will do on my long drives. Thank goodness, in essence, Evan's going to university, because she was the one who was always on the phone to chat to me for hours to keep me awake, even when I was driving home in the middle of the night from soccer. In closing, I want to let you know that Dad left on his own terms. He was exactly where he wanted to be and with whom he wanted to be with. And he had no evident pain and no fuss. I felt great comfort from the fact that he passed peacefully at home and he was able to take back control, and I hope that you can too. I've tried to get peace from the fact that Mom is no longer suffering in pain and that she's up there in heaven with no walker and no oxygen, but honestly, I'm not there yet. I think it's because Mom never really let her pain or function stop her from doing what she wanted with her family. No matter what the pain or the limitation she had, that she would have had if she would have got home from the hospital this time, I know she would still rather be here with us. How I try to talk myself into be okay with Mom passing is by saying that clearly Dad could not go through a Valentine's Day without her. He needed her more than us. Or, we had our parents for 39 years. It's now time for them to join Stephen. It's his turn to have them. I guess that's fair and all, but it sucks. But I'm going to try to follow this statement that popped up on my Facebook the other day. When we lose someone we love, we must learn to not live without them, but to live with the love that they left behind. My parents left a lot of love behind. They taught us to be strong and resilient. They taught us how to grieve gracefully and move forward and keep our lost loved ones alive through continuing to include our memories of them in our daily lives. We will carry them forward with us in the stories we tell, the traditions we keep, and in the love we share. They will live through us in the kindness we give to others. Their legacy will not just be in the past, but in every moment we honor their memory. Mom and Dad, thank you for everything that you did for me, my boys, and all of us. And that's it. But you're not done yet. Because I get to share Angie's words too. So you have to put out paper. This is all that's hers, though, not the stacks of paper. Okay, and I'll see how I can do with this one. I may cry more, because I'm not as familiar. But anyway, to the two people who believed in me, supported me, and loved me the most. Not sure how I'm going to move on, but I know I will, because you taught me to never quit and always push through. I will miss your phone calls. I will miss our coffee date. I will miss calling every night on my way home from work to ask if there's anything you or Dad needs. I will miss having to run over to the apartment because the phone is off the hook because Mom didn't hang it up, and this happened a few times a week. Mom, I will miss the countless hours you spent helping me with everyday things, like for my house, my car, my dog, everything. Are we gonna dance? They have a much better volume. I don't know who's playing this, but you might as well dance, everybody. It's really tempting to me, but it would really embarrass my kids. I just love to go out there in the middle and start to dance. But I'm refraining. I could stun Joel. Somebody really didn't want to listen to me. I'm only kidding, Amy. Like, I'm not really mad. Or some was just scared I was going to start to cry. Anyway, back to me. To me talking about Ange. I will miss the tough conversations and you helping me work through, the ones I never wanted to talk about and usually ended up with me crying. I will miss all the things you've taught me, like baking, cooking pie, making applesauce, preserving, quilting, and so much more. You were a fantastic teacher. I will miss when I'm sitting near or close to you and you have my hand or my arm, your thumb gently rubbing very softly against it just to let me know that you're there and supporting me. Dad, I will miss going to the Wolves games with you and sitting with the elite fans. I will also miss your banter when I would call to tell you I caught a mouse all by myself. Your question always being, did you take the mouse out of the trap and reset it? I would say, nope. Those only cost $2 for two. And he would say, well, then you really didn't catch it and deal with it. I could go on and on about all the things I will miss. I have so many memories that I will always keep close to my heart. Mom and Dad, you were always the biggest fans of everything I did, and that was important to me. My volunteering for Special Olympics, the provincial and the national games. You would always drive me to the bus and pick me up. Although you did forget to pick me up once after I was at nationals for a week out west. And you always wanted to hear all about it. Who was going to make sure I am home from working wing night at the clubhouse on Wednesdays? Each week I would call Mom on my way home so she knew I was home safe. And of course, Mom was always eager to hear who I saw, what I learned, and if I made any tips. Dad was always in bed when I was coming home, but that was the first thing he asked me when I talked to him the next day. How was my night, and was it busy? Mom and Dad, you ran the best doggy daycare around. Ever since Mom was in the hospital in October, we spent time looking for dogs, as I do think Mom knew she would not be here for long, and I needed something to love and keep me company. So right down to the very last minute we were talking, on the Thursday she passed, she made me promise to buy a puppy. Dad, you are my hero and the strongest man I ever knew. You fought to the bitter end. I will miss your whisker rubs, all your sports advice, and I will even miss listening to the Sunday night oldies singing in the car with you and Mom. Since Dad was first diagnosed at the end of August, every night I had the pleasure of tucking him in and telling him I loved him. And I'd always say, how much do I love you? And at first, he didn't always say it back, but then he started to say, a lot. And I would say, you will never, ever know how much. When Dad was in Stratford, I missed 3 nights. It was the hardest 3 nights because we didn't have our nightly routine. I'm truly grateful that I took the time I was able to spend the last month with Mom and Dad, even though there were times we were fighting and not getting along. This was mostly in the middle of the night, because they both seemed to want to be up in the middle of the night, and Debbie and I didn't agree with that. But there was a lot of love and memories that went on too. Mom fought a hard fight to the bitter end as well, and I know she was fighting really hard for me because she was worried I wouldn't be okay. But before she passed away, I told her I would be okay. I told her Kevin, Debbie, Nikki, and the boys would have very big shoes to fill to support me the way her and Dad had, but I know they will. Mom and Dad, thank you for everything you've done for me, Kevin, and Debbie, and teaching us how to be strong, independent people. I will continue to work on this as I'm sensitive, but knowing that I have you both up there watching over me will make it easier. I will end by saying I love you even more than you'll ever know. Ange. Here.
Now, Angie, when you get that dog, I think it should be called Jam. One more speaker, and we are saving the best for last. Those of you who are grandparents know that grandparents have a special role. Their grandkids never seem to do any wrong. They are the light of their lives. Parents become, to their own children, dumb when they become grandparents because everything that we did and got in trouble for, they don't get in trouble for. So, without further ado, the two tallest grandchildren and the oldest grandchildren and the best, well, I won't say the best looking because the two youngins are pretty cute too. But these boys are going to represent the grandchildren all together. Thank you very much, boys.
There you go.
So firstly, I'd like to say hello, and I want to thank you guys all for coming. And also, I'll try not to be as long as my mom. She does really enjoy talking. I know it would have meant a lot to my grandparents that you guys all came. And I guess as the oldest grandchild, I'm the one who has nominated to speak, even though, as most of you know, I'm not really the biggest talker. In my opinion, my grandma and grandpa were the best grandparents out there. Not to offend anyone here who is a grandparent, but they were the best. They did everything and anything for me, Will, Colton, and Weston. Even if they themselves couldn't do it, they would find another way it could get done. As many of you know, my grandma loved the phone. So if there's something else she'd find someone. If there's something she couldn't do, she'd be straight on the phone straight away to find someone who could. In some ways, I'd even consider her like a teenager, how much she loved her phone. Even though it wasn't a fancy cell phone and just a house phone, she still loved it. She, however, always seemed to find time in her busy phone schedule to talk to me and my mom on the long drives home from Kitchener. And when I say found time, I mean she talked to us for the whole hour and a half. Even though I did often pretend I didn't appreciate these calls, it was always nice to talk about what I had done in recent days and other interesting facts. Another thing my grandma loved was making sure all the people she loved were always fed. As most of you know, last year I moved and lived in Toronto to play soccer. And every time after I'd been home, when I went to leave, my grandma would have all sorts of food made for me to take back with me. Chili, muffins, beef, etc. She always made sure I wouldn't go hungry. One of the things she was most known for were her shortbread cookies, which she always made around Christmas. I remember often trying to convince her to make them year-round, but she never agreed to it. She wanted to keep it as a Christmas special. I think all of us grandkids were the same when it came to Grandma's shortbread. For instance, this Christmas, every time we were at the apartment as a family, Colton and Weston would have their hands full with 2 or 3 shortbread cookies, running around, often ending up in Grandma's bed and leaving crumbs. Grandma's bed was always a fun spot for Colton and Weston to play in, as it was an automatic bed and could do all sorts of cool things, raise the head and footboard, stuff like that, and vibrate. It was something that always interested Colton and Weston. My grandpa always loved having Colton and Weston over at the apartment and babysitting Colton and Weston. Colton is more like me, a bit quieter and more reserved. But it was clear that he always loved his grandpa and his grandpa loved him. On the other hand, Weston and him were like best friends. Every time Weston was at the apartment, he would come in and search for his grandpa to give him knuckles. The day that my grandpa died, Weston went into grandpa's room, searching for him multiple times. He'd go in the room on his little toy tractor, not see him. He'd come out with a sad face, go back in a couple more times, thinking that something might change. Weston also took his hat that day and wore it, which is something that he'd never done before. My brother was exactly like our grandpa. They had the same interests and same attitude and opinion on so many things. They both loved fishing, hockey, football, and being outdoors. They also did every kind of work task together. They put up Christmas lights at all our houses, cut all 3 lawns, and they just did everything like that together. And they always seemed to find something interesting to talk about to pass the time. During the last couple of months my grandpa was alive, I think I really got to know him better than I ever had before. He adopted this carefree attitude that he didn't have before. He seemed to almost do and say whatever he wanted. If you were ever at one of my brother's hockey games and listened to him, it was hilarious. He was yelling about everything, especially the refs, as I think all of us do. But I believe that this carefree attitude is something that we could all take in and adapt in our lives, as even though maybe not soon, one day, unfortunately, we will all be gone. Another thing that happened in recent time was my grandpa took a serious interest in soccer. If it was on the TV, you weren't allowed to change it. I remember him getting mad at my mom a couple times when she tried to. My mom still hasn't really gotten on the soccer train unless I'm playing. As a pair, my grandma and grandpa were a great duo. Even though they weren't necessarily a TV couple or a fancy one, it was clear that they both loved each other. Obviously, they bickered and often fought, but they always came back together and grew from it. This is something that I want to apply in my future relationships, as I feel as though today often you'll see couples breaking up after one fight, and everybody wants this fancy relationship. But I don't think that is how it should be. I know my brother has taken a slightly different approach, and rather than taking observational advice, taken more verbal advice from my grandpa. He took advice on dating from my grandpa. So at the time, I think apparently he was talking to 3 girls. How? I don't know. I really don't. And what my grandpa's advice was, why not trial 3 rather than focusing on one too much? One of the last things that I promised my grandpa right after my grandma passed away was that I would teach Colton and Weston all about their grandpa, and unfortunately, enough to teach them about both their grandparents, and explain just how loving, caring, helpful, and amazing they were. And I know that me and my brother will do everything we can to make sure this happens, because Colton and Weston deserve it. Now, these 2 are already here. I don't know where Weston is, but he was supposed to come up for the last part. So, I just think it's all to say, we love you forever, Grandma and Grandpa.
Hello, short bus. It's okay. Deb, I can see why you had them go last. And boys, I'm going to give you a little motherly advice. Don't look at girls until you're 32. They're nothing but trouble, okay? To all of you gathered here today, may I express the family's gratitude for your presence. The journey of grief is long, and those who walk it should not have to walk it alone. In times like this, nothing takes the place of friends. Your presence helps the family realize how valuable Bob and Peggy were to the others and reveals the significance of their lives. May you all continue to keep in touch with each other, continue sharing the life stories, and continue supporting the family and each other. We are blessed to live in such a wonderful community. Ladies and gentlemen, there'll be food there. It's time to socialize, gather, do some hugging, spreading some germs, couple more beers, and safe travels home. Thank you.